Hi, everybody. Live from Hollywood Productions Amsterdam. Welcome to another Corona Diaries live chat. And today's special guest, the famous action director Jesse Johnson. And now we are connected to Los Angeles. And let's see Jesse Johnson. Here is Jesse Johnson from Los Angeles with his newest film.
How are we doing this time? Can you hear me better?
Yes, I hear you very well, actually. I started again, so looks good. How is everything? Yeah, that's cool. All right, Jesse, I think yeah, let's let's talk about the nice to see you too. There are some cuts in the sound, Jess, so hopefully it will be better soon. Los Angeles, Amsterdam. I think difficult connection, Jesse.
I don't know. Any better?
That's okay. So yeah, I think a little bit better. We'll try.
Good,
We'll
good.
try. What can we do? Otherwise, when yeah. So anyway, so let's talk about the Debt Collectors, the latest movie, which just released.
Fantastic. Yes. What would you like to know?
I
We're,
want to know everything.
I
So
will tell you everything I know.
okay, please. You are the director of this great projects, actually the first movie and the second movie, and you have a great cast, of course, great actors. Scott Atkins and Louis Mandylor played in the both movies. And tell us the story of the second movie. I mean, how was the shooting? How you work with them? How was the working experience with Louis and Scott Atkins together for the second time in the same project? Actually, with Avengement, maybe the third time, of course. But let's say, how is the movie?
Well, I love working with those guys. That goes without sort of needing to be sort of explained. It's just a joy working with both of them. I choose to do that. With regard to the actual film itself, I was initially sort of, I took a picture to Ehud Bleiberg, who runs Bleiberg Entertainment. I had a script with him we were going to do, and he really, really wanted to do a sequel to Debt Collector. It wasn't, to be honest, it wasn't the top of my priority. I didn't really like the idea of doing it at all. I felt that we'd done that, finished that chapter, and were ready to go away. And a few weeks went by, and then I got a call from Ehud and Scott together on the phone. And Scott had an idea, a synopsis in mind, and they pitched me on it. And Scott's very, very persuasive, and he was very enthusiastic. And by the end of the pitch, with these two characters, when you make a film, it's almost like a love affair with the characters that you're making, especially when you've written and directed it, and you spend this very, very intense sort of period with them all the way through to delivering the film, actually all the way through to publicizing the film. And there's a part of you that doesn't want to go back to that, that wants to just forge new ground and move forwards and not sort of revisit where you've been before. Uh, but in this case, when I did return to that world and I did return to these two characters, especially within the synopsis that Scott had come up with, it felt really exciting. It felt like there was another movie there, and it felt like it was okay. Enough time had passed. It was good to get back to knowing these guys in the same way that you find an old shirt or a pair of shoes or something like that you've worn in and are very, very comfortable, and you put them on. It's like, this is really cool. The parameters were there. we knew the characters, and it felt very natural going back and doing a continuation of that world. And the boys, I think, felt that way as well. They were very, very nervous. I remember when we were in pre-production, we had a read-through, and we often have read-throughs, where you get to hear the dialogue and make sure it's all sounding correct, and there's no sort of absurd stretches of the imagination. And we did this read-through, and it's the worst read-through I've ever had. And we all looked at each other afterwards, and it was a very strange beat, because we thought, there was that sort of panic moment, like, oh my God, I don't know if this film worked at all. I really don't. And we were very panicky all the way up to doing the first scene, which was the scene in the diner where the boys basically recount what's gone on over the last 7 months. And that nervousness plays into that scene. And something happened between the read-through and doing the scene on set where the characters came to life. And I think at that moment, within the first or second take, just watching the guys kind of feel each other out, all of that nervousness and all of that energy went into, onto the screen, and it felt really, really good again. But it was nerve-wracking all the way up to filming this film, wondering if we were, done the right thing, were going to look like the worst kind of mercenaries out there, guys just doing it for money, just making a sequel for money, but it really sort of felt organic and natural, and the boys were able to sort of reach further into the characters that they developed on the first film, knowing now the parameters of what they're like. It was no longer an experiment to see if they'd work. It was now an experiment to see if we could bring more to the screen. So it was a really enjoyable experience, and once we got going with it, it was good. But I'm blessed to have partners, in crime like Louis and Scott, who can just bring it, who just, who really, really worked hard. I don't know if you've seen all the photos of them sort of going through the script on set, but they do so much research, and they play with the scenes backwards and forwards and upside down and, left and right, just to make sure it works. And it's really a joy working with them. So I got lucky. There's a long answer for you, eh?
Yeah. I mean, it's really cool. I like the trailer very much, actually. We were just watching while you are talking, so explaining. So it was really cool. Also, you did great. And also some part of the movie you shot in Las Vegas, huh? Vegas.
Maybe. Certainly we felt like we were in Vegas.
Okay. Yeah, because it looks very active, like many people, and a lot of action scenes, which is really incredible. I mean, it looks very, very nice, actually, so I like how you make the film again. So it was really cool. Let's look at a little bit more and see some scenes.
These pictures, I work with a cameraman, cinematographer, Jonathan Hall, who's very, very good. He's a tremendous asset. Do you want me to shut up while you play that?
No, you can talk over it. It's okay.
We talk a great deal about sort of influence and inspiration and which direction we're going to go with the way these films are shot. And a lot of what I do is based on what I'm seeing out there and trying to not be like every other film that's out there. So people, will look at this picture and they say, oh, it's got a throwback to the 80s. They really don't know what the hell they're talking about. And I don't know if any of them actually ever saw an 80s film. They've watched Stranger Things and think they're an expert on 1980s cinema. But the truth is, it's nothing like an 80s film whatsoever. What we have chosen to do with the picture is basically go back beyond when handheld became a fashion, which is around about sort of the Paul Greengrass film Sunday Bloody Sunday, when he took over, and then when he took over the Bourne Supremacy sequels. And he did it very, very well. He used handheld in a manner which was innovative and cutting edge and really, really sort of groundbreaking and wonderful. But what happens when you have one film or a succession of films made by a very, very skilled director like that is that every moron with no vision copies them. And so then you get an enormous amount of films shot with handheld, where what they're doing is basically covering up the fact that they have no creativity, really have no idea about choreography, and are sort of trying to hide the fact they don't know what they're doing. And so people get very, very bored of handheld, which is actually, it's a very, very good technique. It makes sense to use, but you can't touch it now because, the films look terrible. So what we did was go back beyond that and sort of try to look at it from a point of view, like Kurosawa or Ford, where you create a vista with your frame, and then let the choreography work within that vista, as opposed to the other way around. You know, wobble cam, try and
Exactly.
cover up your weaknesses. And you can do that when you have actors like Louis and Scott, who are actual physical performers. They'll remember choreography. They'll get in there, and they can do it incredibly, incredibly well. With Scott, your biggest problem is finding anyone that can double him, who can move with the speed and elegance and sort of ferocity that he has on camera. It's almost impossible to find a stuntman that will do that. There's a handful that can obviously do that, but they're expensive and difficult to find. But so Scott is forced, to do his own stunts, but he also loves doing his own stunts as well. My job, and Luc Lafontaine, the stunt coordinators, becomes, where do we draw the line and say, okay, dude, this is too dangerous. You do this, you're going to hurt yourself, or worse, we're going to, not going to be able to film anymore today. But the boys are very, very willing and very physical. And as you'll notice on this picture, you're seeing guys actually doing their own choreography, their own stunts, their own action. And I think that's worth the price of admission. That separates us from the competition, which is, predominantly visual effects. And, you look at a Marvel film and they've got a succession of stuntmen doubling every part. The key action sequences, you're looking at a CG generated animated character, not basically an advanced version of Bugs Bunny doing the stunts. And, which is fantastic. And I love those films and they're wonderful, but I think people want an alternative as well. You want to actually go to watch the lions fight the gladiators. It's an interesting thing to see people that are actually trained, physical, and can do it themselves.
Exactly.
But also beyond that, the guys are fantastic actors, and I don't want that to get lost in the mix either. We got very lucky with this one, with the cast. They're brilliant.
And they're very also funny, they're really, you created a nice, great couple. It looks fantastic. In the first film also, of course. And
I wish I created them. I didn't create them at all. Stu and I wrote a script, and the boys brought it to life. They really did. I said George Stevens or someone like that. Any great director, any director, not great or great, will tell you that the casting is 80-90% of our job. You get really good cast in there. It's really about capturing it and staying out of their way and allowing them the room to do what they do. And with Scott and Louis, you're just so blessed, But we're good. I mean, Vladimir Kulich is very, very good. He had a chance to really stretch on this one as well. I think he actually cries in one scene. And then Louis Ski Carr is hasn't done much, that people would recognize before, but is a phenomenal talent. He plays Molly X in the picture, the antagonist. And I just loved working with him. He was ferocious and really, really good. And then, we have Mei Ling in there, who's phenomenal, and Charity, who's a newcomer, who's very, very good. And Marina Sirtis from Star Trek, who I've worked with before, who was very, very gracious to come out, and Vernon Wells from The Road Warrior and Commando, who's also very, very generous in that he came out and sort of helped out, in his team. So we were very lucky, and that's the advantage of shooting in Los Angeles, is that those guys are all sort of local. The disadvantage is it can become very, very complex shooting action and stunts here, and we certainly had our fair share of complexities.
And Jesse, the third film, we are waiting also the third one, the Debt Collectors.
Well, I know that I'm completely white out here. I know that the boys have some ideas in mind, and I would be up for it, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I really enjoy going, revisiting with these characters. I don't see it as a traditional sort of
but maybe Jesse, maybe I will talk to Scott and Louis. Maybe we can organize something in Amsterdam, Paris, London triangle. We can do it. I think that's nice.
Have you been talking to Scott? Because that's what he wants to do.
Yeah, I will talk to him. Don't worry, and I will try to convince him to make the third movie in Amsterdam, on the canals, with chasing scene, on the water, with the boats. It will be really cool.
That would be brilliant. I would definitely do that one. That'd be a lot more.
Yeah, and I will tell him. I will convince him. I will tell him that, Scott, you have to come, and we will do this. It will happen. And I will help him. I will help you guys. Like with whatever you need here. So it will be really cool to do it in Amsterdam, maybe in Brussels, Paris. Like in nearby. So it will be easier to travel, and London, of course. So it will be a really cool project. I think we will work for this.
Let's do it. I love it.
I love it too. And Jesse, also before, a lot of people also writing about Avengement, because you did also just before these movies Avengement, and that was also interesting movie, I think, with again with Scott Adkins and also Lewis get a small part in it. So it was really interesting movie, I think. So what do you want to say about
Thank
the
you very
Avengement?
much. Yeah, Avengement is a picture I'm very proud of. It's it was a film that I've been trying to make for quite some time. You know, a lot of these were pictures that I had, you know, had been taking around town, you know, scripts that I've been taking around town trying to get financed. You know, they had, you know, in with Debt Collector, I'd had a succession. Bill Pullman was attached at one point. Jean-Claude Van Damme was attached at one point. Burt Reynolds, Michael Rooker. The list of different actors that had been attached to Debt Collectors was amazing. You know, it was really cool, but I could never set it up. You know, when you have something that's a little different, it's a quirky business. You know, everyone wants something different until you give them something different, and at which point they say, why don't you like something more familiar? We had tried for a long time, and then Scott and I reconnected on Savage Dog. I went straight from Savage Dog to Accident Man, straight from Accident Man to Triple Threat. And by that third film, we knew that we had a good sort of working relationship, but a shorthand that worked well. Scott, you know, pushed me in ways that I hadn't been pushed by an actor before, and he felt that I pushed him in ways that he hadn't been pushed before. You know, he's done some great films with some great directors, but sometimes there's a resonance that happens that you know, it can be bitchy, it can be catty, it can be amusing, it can have, you know, it can be humorous, but there's a energy that happens that pushes you just beyond your comfort zone and makes you question the work that you've done, where perhaps you've been a little lazy, a little sort of, or you've taken the short way out. And just having the right person around you can make you re-look at that stuff and work a little bit harder, you know, at certain things. I felt that Scott was doing that for me, and my work elevated. And I believe he feels his work elevated to a degree. So we were happy. And at that point, you know, I started looking at scripts that I had that hadn't been produced. And we dusted off Debt Collector, which, you know, was from quite a ways back. I mean, there were fax machines and telexes in it. No one had cell phones. It gives you an idea, you know, about roughly when that film was out there. You know, that film I'd earned my living off, by the way, for about 3 years, with options with people trying to make it. They'd paid my rent with them, and you know, it was just one of those ones that had not got, you know, produced, had, you know, which is, you know, it's usually the majority here. So we dusted it off, revisited it, had Stu Small come in and do a huge pass on it, which was, you know, instrumental. It's not, you know, it's not a small thing that Stu does. He works very, very diligently and morphs these pictures into, you know, an apparition of what they once were. And at that point, we got it financed and did that one. And the same thing sort of happened with Avengement, which was, as I say, it was a script I'd had for a while. We dusted it off. Stu did his pass, which in this case was quite a lot deeper, which forced me to go deeper. And we made the film, and it was something about it. You know, when certain films happen, they trigger something, and everything comes together just right. You know, and Avengement was one of those pictures. You know, we found that pub when, you know, it was the only pub that worked, but it was perfect. We found the prison. It was the only prison that would have worked, but it was perfect. And the cast came together. You know, we had no money on that movie at all, and yet the cast is representative of a film with far, far larger a budget.
Wow.
I had an English producer come up to me, and you know, he was very, very, you know, he's made some films, and he was sort of acting like he was, you know, was giving me some good advice. He said, next time, young man, don't choose to set your film in just 1 or 2 locations. Think of a few more so that it can have some color to it. As you have absolutely no concept. Those were literally the only locations we could afford. it was not a creative choice.
Yeah.
You know, our film, of course, went on to do far better than any single film that he's done. In fact, all of his films combined, I don't think have come anywhere close to what Avengement did in terms of views and sheer just money profits. But we don't need to mention that. That doesn't.
And Jesse, by the way, you mentioned in your talking Savage Dog, you know, also another Scott Adkins project of you. You directed them again, Scott Adkins in the Savage Dog. How was the movie? Because also Marco was played there. I think Marco Zaror.
Well, the film was an interesting experience. Yeah, it was Marco Zaror as well. Got lucky on that one as well. We I had a script which I took to a financer that I hadn't worked with before, and I was at a low point. I'd made a black and white movie, an art movie, which had basically derailed me. I felt it was a very, very good movie. It was a very personal film, a very interesting film with good performances. I shot in black and white, but everyone thought I was out of my mind. I couldn't raise financing at all for the love of anything. It took 2 years of sort of living off breadcrumbs and breakfast cereal, having to go back to stunts, which is not much fun when you're in your 40s because you don't bounce anymore and it hurts a little bit more when you hit the ground. But eventually I found a company that wanted to work with me, and they said, look, we like you, we like the script. If you can get Scott Adkins, we'll make it. And I'd met Scott years before, and we talked about doing pictures. We'd had a film with Seagal that had almost gone, that had ended up falling through. So we chatted a little bit. I called him up, and he liked the script. I took it back to Bleiberg, and they said, oh, that's great, but we actually meant to say if you can get Scott Adkins and Juju Chan. So at that point, I ran out and managed to track down Juju Chan and attached her and took it back. And they said, well, actually, we meant Scott Adkins, Juju Chan, and Marco Zaror. So at that point, I ran out and found Marco, and I knew him. He was also in Pit Fighter, by the way. He was a stuntman in Pit Fighter. So I tracked him down and sort of attached him. And by this point, they really couldn't say no because they'd sort of promised so much. So they gave me some money to go make the film. And it was a very, very tough film to make. It was way too ambitious. I hadn't made a film that involved so much gunfire or fighting or stuntmen or uniforms. Period pictures are very difficult because you can't just grab a crew member and put him in the background in a crowd scene. He needs to be dressed in 1940s outfit, 1940s shoes, have a 1940s haircut or 50s haircut. And so we learned that doing a period picture is not a really good idea for a low-budget film. But it was fun, and it went well, and it did extraordinarily well, amazingly. It surprised us all because we thought we had a turkey. Scott and I were terrified. There was so much that had gone wrong in that film, and, so many sort of elements that hadn't quite worked that were sort of, on the film. It felt like every day was a disaster. But then it came out, it worked really well. And, obviously you can see a lot of the, process of Scott and I learning about each other. When I watch it back, I know what I would have done differently. But, you have to be careful about that because that can drive you mad, that kind of self-analysis. But it worked out really well and did very well. And it was the start of although there had been one telephone call where Scott phoned me and said it was the worst film he'd ever done. He'd never, ever worked with me again. which we laugh about now. But that's what happens sometimes. It's an interesting business. I have learned in my years doing this at this point that it's the ones you don't think are going to be great which end up defining you. So you just have to be careful every movie you do. You have to put your heart and soul into it, and every ounce of energy and blood and passion, and just keep looking. For example, in Avengement, we had a scene where a stunt woman is chased through the streets, and it was a whole day's worth of being chased, because Scott needs to chase her handbag, and she doesn't want her handbag to get stolen because it has something in it that's very valuable. So she chases him, and she's an older woman, not a young woman, and she chases him through the streets, desperate to get her handbag back, and then gets hit by a car. So we hired a stunt woman who could get hit by a car, who was, understood it, saw it in an email, understood that was what she was going to do. We did the sequence, which took, a whole day's filming, which is considerable on a small film. And then she changed her mind and didn't want to do the car hit. She felt it was too dangerous. And there's very, very little you can do in a situation like that. You can't say, I'm going to force you to do the car hit because, that's not what you do. We're in motion pictures. We're not in, so we didn't do the car hit. And the film didn't work. So cut to LA and edited the film, and I realized we needed that. It's going to be in the trailer, and it was in the trailer. So I put on the woman's outfit because we didn't have any money left. So obviously it had to be, we paid a stunt woman to do it, so I wasn't taking money out of anyone's pocket. And I went out and did the car hit here, and we reversed the footage, so it looks like it's on the right, the correct side of the road for England. But the woman you see getting hit by the car, shattering the windshield, is actually me, and you can see my yellow sneakers because I obviously couldn't fit into her women's shoes. So, but I mean, the point is, and I don't recommend that by any means to any director coming in, but you know, you have to almost be prepared to go to war to get these things to work sometimes, and it can be blood equity. You have to be careful of it not becoming that way too often, because you know you'll get seriously hurt or die. But luckily, I'd done a lot of car hits as a stuntman when I was coming up in my 20s. I didn't quite remember how hard it hurt, but it was worth it. We got it on the second take. The first one, it didn't shatter the windshield. No. I went straight over the roof of the car and landed in the road behind, which was annoying because it was very painful, but wasn't going to be any good in the film. So, how do we get onto this awful subject? Oh, about investing in these pictures. Yeah, sometimes you have to invest to make them work.
Yeah.
But Savage Dog was a case of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a nice project of you, Savage Dog.
Yeah, we had to put a lot into it, you know. A lot of it was left behind, you know. It's funny, there were a lot of scenes that were, ended up being like a 2.5-hour movie. That was the irony of it all. And there was a lot of dialogue as the guys talk about, you know, how the various bad guys ended up in the prison camp in Indochina in the late 1950s, which is quite interesting. But, you know, you have to remember when you make a film like this, the bulk of your audience is there for the action.
Yeah.
Is there for, you know, the sort of visceral factor, and it's a balancing act, and Scott understands this very well. If you start making a film that's too dialogue and emotion and driven and doesn't have enough of the action in it, you're going to disappoint the bulk of your audience, and that can be very dangerous. That can be a really risky road to take. So you have to make sure you have it. When I started out over here, I worked for Roger Corman.
Jesse, by the way, how many movies did you make as a director? I mean, how many movies did you direct?
I think we're on number 15 or 16, somewhere in there.
Okay, cool.
A few that got retitled and re-edited, put out, you know. But yeah, I think it's about 16. You know, when I started out with Roger Corman, I remember his sort of advice was, make sure you have an action sequence every 8 to 10 minutes, 8 to 10 pages of a script, or 8 to 10 minutes of screen time. If you're making, you know, an erotic thriller, make sure you have a piece of eroticism every 8 to 10 minutes, because it's almost like an internal metronome that he felt needed to be satisfied. And I don't think you need to obviously be that didactic and sort of, you know, dogmatic about it, but there is certainly something to be said for keeping the audience. You know, I always loved the slow burn, the 1970s slow burn, where you had this real build up, and it was emotional. I did it with The Butcher, and we had probably 40 minutes go by where you're slowly building up, and this guy's being knocked down, he's being abused, he's being talked down to, he's being slapped around, until finally he blows up, and it's this sort of epic shootout in a bar. But I realized that didn't work, because the average sort of audience member that was going to see an action film called The Butcher with Eric Roberts didn't want to wait 35 minutes to see an action sequence. They were done by that stage. You'd lost them, you'd offended them, you'd upset them, and it was a negative experience. So, you know, you sort of learn you have to do something to kiss. You know, I don't know. It's got to be written and woven skillfully into the script, and you know, you need good partners like Stu and Scott to do that. By the way, Scott works an awful lot on the script as well. I think that's worth noting.
Yep. That's cool. And how about the other movie with Dolph Lundgren, The Package?
The Package. I think I was like the 6th or 7th director asked on that one. Everyone had turned it down because it was a strange title and a tricky script. MPCA came to me, and they pitched. You know, they had me do my pitch on it, and I took it very, very seriously. And I think that was what Stone Cold wanted. I talked with him over the phone. I got on very, very well with him over the phone. He's very straightforward, very down to earth, blue collar, no sort of, you know, highfalutin aspirate. You know, no. There's nothing false about him. The famous thing that the sort of recurring thing he says on set is, don't try and put 10 pounds of shit into a 5-pound bag. Meaning, don't be too ambitious. Understand what kind of film we're making, and keep it. You know, don't get lost with trying to, you know, aspire to things that you're not going to be able to achieve and ruin other parts of the movie because of that. He was brilliant to work with. I really, really enjoyed it. We had 2 or 3 other projects planned immediately after Package, but he got a knee injury that required extensive surgery, and I think it didn't go too great. And at that point, we had a long conversation. It was quite heartfelt, and he just said, you know, he prefers doing reality TV where, you know, it pays on time and he can drink his beer, doesn't have to do ab workouts every day. And, you know, he felt more comfortable doing that, you know, than running around and hitting the ground. Because, you know, if you do an action movie, invariably you're doing a fight scene, or you're falling over, or you're tripping, or you're jogging, or you're jumping out of a car. And if you do have a, you know, a liability like a bad knee, it can be devastating, you know. But it was very upsetting because you know, we had a couple of projects that would have been really, really exciting, and I was looking forward to doing those with him. Still a huge fan of his. We've talked a few times since the package, and obviously still friends with Dolph Lundgren. He's optioned a script off me. Actually, I think they optioned it last year, which would be really, really good script for him. So we'll see how it all plays out. But I really enjoyed it. It was working in Vancouver, BC, and I'd worked there before. I'd done a film with Mark Dacascos called Alien Agent up there. I love the crews up there, and I love the supporting, you know, local talent. Jerry Trimble, a great friend of mine, who was actually one of the inspirations for The Debt Collectors, ended up moving up there. He's a full-time actor up there. He's carved a wonderful niche for himself doing TV. And so I was able to use him in the package, and, you know, Darren Shalavi, who I was friends with from the old days. And the package was a really fun experience for me. And, you know, you have a little bit less time up there, but the crews are union and very, very good. So as long as you're prepared and planned and going with a shot list, the quality of what they can do is very, very good. Is phenomenal. It feels like being on a big budget movie. Just got to be very, very planned and know that you've got one or two takes and that's it, you know.
Yeah, I mean,
we had a crane for one day, and so I think I had 7 crane shots, and they were all spread out over one block, so that we'd get each crane shot, move it to the next place on the block that would look like somewhere else in the script, film that crane shot, move it to another place, and then the crane was loaded into the back of the truck at 3 p.m. and vanished. And we spread those crane shots throughout the whole film. You know, you play games like that, but, you know, which is not an unfamiliar thing for any other low budget filmmaker. They'll understand that kind of rationale. But it was a blast. You know, I made a lot of friends in the picture.
And how about the big cast? You know, with the triple threat, because you have many people there. I mean, Tony Ya, Selina Jade, Scott Atkins again, Michael J. White, Ron Smernberg, you know, many names, interesting names, Tiger Chen. So it is a big cast, and I think it's an interesting movie also. Triple Threat.
Triple Threat was, I was on Accent Man, and Scott was reading a script, and he kept showing me away. So I've got this big script. I'm going to be working with Tony Jaa and Iko Uwais, and I was kind of sniffing around trying to find out what it was, because, oh, who's directing? He said, oh, they don't know who's directing it yet, but they're asking if I might want to play the bad guy in it. I said, you should do it. That'd be great. But he didn't want me to see it. He said, I've been sworn to secrecy. And within about a week, they called me and asked if I could come in. And what actually occurred was there were 2 scripts, but neither script was appropriate. Both scripts were deficit. And so Joey O'Brien and I and Mike Selby had to write an original script whilst casting and location scouting and prepping the actual shoot itself, deciding, you know, what action needed, you know, what special effects needed to be bought, what guns needed to be brought in, you know, what stuntmen, you know, needed to be rehearsing. Tim Mann was looking at me saying, well, what's the movie about? Well, we had no movie, so I had to tell him the fight scenes, and we worked very, very hard. It was everyone pulled together and was tremendous on it. There were no bad apples. Michael Bisping was phenomenal. He kept everyone in line. There were no egos whatsoever on that set. Everyone sat in a group in a circle in their chairs telling jokes until I called them into set, and they'd do their thing. Everyone came with ideas. Tony Jaa was spectacular. Did his best, you know, with the English, and just, you know, everyone gave 110%. And we made a terrific movie. We watched the film for the first time as we were laying back the sound, which, for anyone who doesn't know, is 3 months later. You know, so you've cut it, you've colored it, the sound is being put in, the CGI was being determined, and then someone at the back of the theater, one of the executive producers, said, oh, I've made a mistake. The film actually needs to fulfill a Chinese agreement. And they snatched the film away, the edited film, and started recutting it, and came up with 4 or 5 more scenes that they could cut into it. They took a guy that had never made a movie, made less movies than myself and the editor, and had him writing. writing scenes that might appeal to a Chinese audience. And they, when I said, you're ruining the film, they said, well, you know, you can help shoot these scenes or we'll get someone else. That's simple as that. So I helped shoot the film that ends up ruining the film. But it's all right. You know, we managed to work very, very hard to hide the scenes and do our best to make it look as good as possible. But all in all, it was a heartbreaking process because everyone had worked so hard to make what was a terrific film, which hopefully one day may get released, but I don't know. I doubt it. I don't hold my breath about such things. But the final film that came out was a very, very pale shadow of the film that it should have been. But at the end of the day, you know, these films don't, you know, maybe I should have been a better, you know, arguer, a better negotiator, a better politician and managed to win them over, but I failed on every level. And, you know, the film that is out there is not nearly as good as the first picture. But I'm very, very proud of the work that everyone did on it. The actors were fantastic. The stunts were phenomenal. Master Seng and Kazoo in Thailand were just brilliant what they did for, you know, for a budget, because it was a very low budget film. And then Tim Mann, you know, his inventiveness and choreography, in my opinion, saved the movie, saved the final movie. You know, there were enormous loopholes. You know, they shot this one scene in China. I wasn't a part of it, and it made no sense. It didn't even work within the story. So we managed to trim that down a little bit, but because they'd spent so much money on it, they wanted some of it in the movie. It was devastating, you know, absolutely heartbreaking. Yeah. You have moments like that in your career once in a while where you look at the final film and you want to commit harakiri. But as it was, we worked very hard. And what really helped it was that I managed to get Sean Murray, my composer, in at the last minute, by the way, 10 days from it going out to theaters, something ridiculous like that. And he pulled together an incredible score, which galvanized the film. He had a fantastic theme for Tony Jaa, which really, really helped. And you know, honestly, you know, between Tim Mann and Sean Murray, they made the film a worthwhile, sort of exciting experience. But it was a very tough one, that one. Still proud of it. And listen, you know, no film comes with a little sign saying, you know, this is what could have been, or this is what it cost. You're simply thrown into the marketplace and you're competing against $100 million studio pictures. And it's that, baby, you know. You want to cry about it, get into another line of work. But yeah, it was fun. It was great being out there in Thailand, working with all those phenomenal sort of talents and physical talents and acting talents and crew. You know, it's probably my favorite country, one of my favorite countries to make movies. I love filming in England because it's familiar to me. LA I love, but it's very difficult. It's very challenging. Thailand is just joyful. You know, the people are so wonderful.
I think Europe will be nice because there are a lot of places, cozy places, hide locations. I think it will be really nice, and I think it will work very well with you, Jesse, because all your projects. This is the Debt
Collector 3, correct, Farrell?
Yeah. So and Jesse, by the way, your background is also you were a stuntman, and then you became a stunt coordinator, and you became part of many amazing movies like Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2, Thor, Avatar, Beowulf, Mission Impossible 3, War of the Worlds, Lincoln, Paranormal Activity, even Ghost Dimension. You know, I think you work with many projects, I mean, in Hollywood.
I was very, very lucky to work as a stuntman on some phenomenal projects. My family are involved in stunts, and that was a brilliant sort of head start that most people don't get. Vic Armstrong and Andy Armstrong are my two uncles, and they hired me a lot to start out with, firstly as a sort of unpaid assistant on Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade and pictures like that, and then as I learnt my craft as a stuntman and as a, you know, doing coordinating jobs on pictures they couldn't do, and then I also worked with some fantastic stunt coordinators. Joe Dunn, who used to double Peter Sellers, hired me a lot. He's a stunt coordinator working here, going all the way back to sort of where the eagle has landed, pictures like that he did. And then Garrett Warren, who's a dear friend of mine, we both doubled Jake Busey, first and second unit stunt doubles on Starship Troopers, and became friends ever since then. And I've worked with him on the Avatar pictures. He worked with him on Lincoln. He's probably the best second unit director working, or most successful second unit director working at the moment. And I've learned an awful lot about my craft by working with some of these great guys. You know, Garrett was very interesting. He's a object lesson in humility, and I watched him rehearse a fight scene on one of the Avatar pictures, and this is rehearsing a fight scene. It's not like the old days. You go off and rehearse for half an hour. This is 2 to 3 weeks of previs, filming, sometimes 30, 20 stunt guys, all being filmed with videotape, edited together, sound effects, CG muzzle flashes put on for the previs to show to the directors and producers. It's equivalent of a small budget film being made when you do these previews on a big movie. And he put his heart and soul into these fight scenes, and it came the day of filming, and I was there for that because I'd been through it, and he was very kindly hiring me between directing gigs. And the director, Cameron, came over, looked at the previews and said, "Nah, you know what, I'm going to scrap all of this. We're going to do it slightly differently," and started describing what was going on. Now, if you have created something and put your heart and soul into it, you have to be, and are then told, we're scrapping all of that, we're going to do something else. It becomes very difficult not to show emotion at that point. I was thinking if someone said that to me, I'd blow up, or at least you'd be able to see my lip quivering or something like that. Garrett was a smile and said, "You know what, that's a fantastic idea. That's awesome. Let's move into whatever your idea is, boss," And it was the ability to put your ego aside and continue forwards like that makes a person fantastic. And I learned more about directing from little things like that, little moments of watching people who are tremendous politicians, tremendous diplomats, and that's what those lessons are the ones that really serve you. Not knowing where to put a camera, that's all.
And Jesse, also you like old Western movies, like we call spaghetti westerns, Like
I love them. Yeah, I love them. I mean, we shot on anamorphic.
Look at this one.
A lot of these pictures because we actually, Jonathan was the one that introduced me to Technoscope, which is the two-perf process that Sergio Leone used. I don't know if he used it for one of the 3 Clint Eastwood westerns, but he certainly used it on Once Upon a Time in the West. And we used that process with Panavision lenses on Charlie Valentine, and that was because of both of our love for the way that Sergio Leone framed, and a lot of the time I find my inspiration in the guys that loved Hollywood movies rather than Hollywood movies. You take someone like Sergio Leone, and all he wanted to be was John Ford, but it was his Italian European version of John Ford, in the same way that Jean-Pierre Melville wanted to be Howard Hawks, but it was his French Parisian version of Howard Hawks that ended up making its way to the screen in pictures like Le Samurai or Le Cercle Rouge. So I find more inspiration in watching their translation of these great directors than going and watching the great directors. You have to watch their movies too, but it's the it's the version of which is often the more brilliant, the more inspiring, and knowing that they had to do that usually with a fraction of the budget,
Yeah, exactly. So, and any new projects coming up, like Accident Man 2?
Accident Man 2's there. It's it was put on hold because of the coronavirus. We have 3, and I say we because it's myself, my manager, have 3 projects that are financed and casting, which were all supposed to go various stages through 2020. So it was devastating, this sort of hold up. It's been absolutely heartbreaking, but in many ways it's good because I've taken the scripts and dug back into them and tried to develop them even further and come up with great pitch decks for them. But you know what, I can only keep putting a positive spin on this for too long. It's really a pain in the ass.
I can imagine. Yeah. And how are the days going?
Because I can't see anything on the phone.
Yeah, and Jesse, how is your days going on in Corona days? Are you
it's
safe?
Good.
Are you doing
I've
okay?
planned and worked out, but and as I say, writing an awful lot and just really polishing and trying to get these scripts as good as they possibly can be. I've written 1 script and finished it, and that's out with a co-writer at the moment who's doing her work on it. And then we've had 1 script that I wrote that went out. My agent sent out as a sale, and then, as I say, the other scripts that I'm attached to, we're just sort of looking at the deals. We're casting at the moment. We have offers out to major talent on 1 film, but everyone's waiting. Everyone's waiting for a thumbs up and are ready to go. I have a really exciting project with Scott that came left of field, which is a English set picture, and it's like nothing that Scott and I have done before. I don't think it's like anything that that it's quite a unique one, and it's a
Is it going to be
set.
action again? Action?
It's a ton of action, but it's a character that digs even deeper into a side of Scott that we haven't seen before, which will be very, very interesting. I think the fans are going to love it, but in the same way that Avengement did, it'll open up our audience to non-Boyka fans as well. You know, we're very lucky that we have this, or you know, Scott's very lucky that it has this incredible fan base from the Boyka movies. They love them.
Yeah.
It's millions strong. And they come to a Scott Adkins film wanting to see a certain amount of action, and they've been very loyal. They've been fantastic. They've embraced Avengement. They've embraced Debt Collectors. They love Savage Dog. They want to see more Boyka films, of course. I can't handle that.
Of course.
And as we move forwards, we're also trying to open up Scott to other fan bases as well. People who are slightly more, you know, who come to movies for an even more dramatic experience with good, you know, even better written parts and better characters and things like that. So this film takes us further in that direction than anything we've done before, and it's a brutal, violent, action-packed picture, and it shoots in England. And so far, this would be my third film in England. I have great luck there. It's you know, when you make a movie, there's an awful lot that depends on luck. Much more than we'd all like to admit to, but it's a you know, it is a place that I really enjoy making movies. Great cast there as well, you know.
Yeah, it is great, you know, and hopefully, yeah, we can hook up soon. And yeah, when you are in England, we will meet up, Jesse. Or yeah, next year maybe we can make a project. I will talk to Scott about it. Maybe yeah, we can make it happen in Holland, in Netherlands.
That would be absolutely sensational. I'd love to come to Netherlands and you know, make a movie there.
Yeah, of course, it will.
One of my favorite directors is from the Netherlands, Paul Verhoeven, who I worked with twice.
He was
Total Recall and Starship Troopers with him, and I just love his work. I really, really love his filmmaking.
And Jesse, yes. Paul was exactly in this spot in front of my Buddha. You know, he came also visited me here in my apartment. We had a great chat. Actually, Casper was here also with him, Casper van Dien. You know, we had a great evening, and also we chat on my terrace. So he loved it. You know, he lives also partly in Holland and partly in America.
Fantastic.
He's a really cool guy.
I went to a DGA screening of Gangs of New York, and I sat with him there, and we chatted a little bit. We were with someone who said, "Oh, that film was way too violent," and Paul very, very noisily interrupted us and said, "No, it wasn't violent enough. It should have had more blood in it. It was fantastic."
Yeah,
it was genius. It was
he's really cool guy, and you know, I mean, I like him very much, of course, from Basic Instinct, and also, you know, Starship Troopers, Hollow Man, and all these films, you know. So he is really cool.
I went and revisited Basic Instinct just recently. It's one of the best shot, best composed. The music in that film is just out of this world good. It's so good. But yeah, you know.
And of course, Total Recall.
It's been wonderful talking with you, Val. Yeah, Total Recall.
Jesse, thank you so much. And we will hook up soon, hopefully, and we will keep in touch. And thank you very much for joining me for today for this amazing chat. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me. Sorry about the terrible reception.
Yeah, but we did our best, and we make it happen, you know. So it's really cool. We made it.
Brilliant. Thank you for having me. Take care, everyone.
All right. Thank you very much, Jesse. See you soon. Bye-bye. Ciao. Bye-bye. It was great. The connection was not the best. The picture was a bit not sharp, but still it was not cut. At least we didn't do any break. So we did the whole chat, almost 50 minutes. It was really cool. And of course, we talked about all these amazing movies of Jesse Johnson and Debt Collectors, the latest movie of him with Scott Adkins and Louis Mandylor. So it was really nice to have him today as my guest. Stay tuned, and thanks for watching. And you can always follow all these chats on Instagram, and after that on Facebook, on my name, Varol Porsumay, and later on it will come all to YouTube on my name, Varol Porsumay. So